Hello everyone and welcome to Your Divine Destiny with me, Nikki. And I want to dive into the psychology of why we are attracted to emotionally unavailable people. And this is something that a lot of people struggle with, and that is why a lot of us beautiful, strong women actually get stuck into situationships and relationships that do not serve or benefit us. And sometimes we sit there and ask ourselves, why do we keep getting into these constant cycles and patterns of toxic relationships with people? Or you might ask yourself, why am I always being drawn to people who are never emotionally available? We never have deep and intellectual talks. We never open up about our feelings, or maybe you want to and they never do. And so you're kind of stuck wondering, why is it that I'm always with these kind of people? The psychology of attraction becomes very interesting when you realize that it actually does not have to do with logic, but it has to do a lot with prediction. Long before you are consciously evaluating whether somebody is good for you, your brain is asking a very different question than what it's supposed to. So rather than asking, is this the kind of love that I deserve? Your brain is asking, is this the kind of love that I expect? Or even, what kind of love do I even expect from others? And these are two very important questions that once you understand the difference, it begins to change everything. So think of all of this as like a subconscious blueprint that is developed by your earliest experiences with your different caregivers. So without you even realizing, from your middle school, or no, even further back, from your childhood to when you're going into your middle school years and then high school years, without realizing, your brain is already developing questions surrounding what you deserve in love, in relationships, as you begin to see them more and more as you grow older. So this can look like, what does love even look like? What do I have to do to be worthy of love? Are people dependable? Can I trust people? This blueprint becomes an overall lens to how you begin to learn about people and relationships. So depending on what you have experienced in your childhood and in your teen years and what you've grown up to see about relationships, this determines highly what your brain is trying to tell you about them. And the thing that you don't realize about your brain is that it's not necessarily trying to keep you happy in these relationships. It is trying to give you what it thinks it's predictable, because our brains are wired to be drawn towards familiar patterns, because familiar patterns is what our brain knows. So therefore, when it recognizes them, it thinks we're safe, even though our nervous system tells us something completely different. And that is why we always feel so uneasy and unsettled. But subconsciously, we don't realize that we become attracted and more, drawn towards these patterns because that's what we are so used to. So all those emotionally unavailable patterns, the chase and the pull, the toxic back and forth, a lot of us don't realize that, oh my gosh, this is just what I've known throughout my whole life. So my brain thinks that when I am in these situations, that this is familiar, so this must be okay, and this feels safe. But our body feels the stress. The nervous system is trying to speak to the brain and let you know that this is not okay, which is why we get so stuck when we know that we're not supposed to be with somebody, but it's so hard to leave them, because at one point you're like, well, I'm so comfortable with them and I want to remain in this situation, but I know it's so bad for me. So the mind and the body is constantly putting you in this misalignment. This is why oftentimes we do not fall in love with people, but we tend to fall in love with patterns. So you might think, imagine two people. You might think the one person who is very emotionally responsive, they communicate with you clearly, they handle their emotions very well, and they show up for you, and they on paper are there to tend to make you feel really great. But then you meet another person who is very emotionally distant, who does not respond to you well or communicate with you well, who mentally and emotionally does drain you. You're thinking, why do they pull away after intimacy? There's a lot of mixed signals. I don't know what to do with this relationship, but I feel so stuck in it. And on paper, okay, the first person it seems to be a much healthier relationship, right? I should go for that person. But why am I so drawn to the emotionally unavailable one? Because at the end of the day, your mind is drawn to that pattern. It is used to that pattern. So when you are with people like that, your body, when you even achieve or receive any form of response from them that satisfy your internal needs with what you do want from them, you become more naturally attracted to that person because that response feels like a reward. And I will dive a little bit more deeper into that a little later on. But what I want to say here is that when you are attracted to this person, it's not because you sense that it is healthier, but because it feels more familiar. Your mind is thinking, okay, I've seen this movie before, so I feel more comfortable sitting through it. And then you don't know that that familiarity is masked by what you think is chemistry. That is not chemistry. What many people don't realize is that your nervous system tries to find so many ways to resolve these unfinished emotional experiences. So if you grew up feeling emotionally unseen and neglected and almost like you had to kind of like beg for affection in a way, your nervous system does not forget those wounds. Instead, it tries to search for different ways to try to finish that story. And then in your mind, this is when you start to say to yourself, maybe this time I will finally get the love that I didn't before. Maybe this time I will finally get to be treated the way I wasn't last time or in my previous relationships. This is where you don't realize that you are trying to heal an old relationship through a new one. And psychologist Carl Jung says something so beautiful about this. He says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is where your brain's reward system gets involved. Many people believe that they are addicted to one person, when in reality, they are addicted to the uncertainty. Emotionally unavailable people are constantly inconsistent. So that inconsistency becomes addictive. And why? Because when you are constantly waiting around to see if that person will text you back, when you are constantly waiting around to see if this is the day that they start to do something nice for you or special or even speak with you and communicate very bare minimum things, when that person finally does that, like let's say you've been waiting all day for a call or a text back, you feel very down. And then when you finally see their name on your phone, you get that rush of dopamine. And then your brain starts to connect that feeling of, okay, every time I see this person's name on my phone, I feel very happy and I get that dopamine rush. Then you are going to get addicted to that feeling and constantly expect it. So now the only times that your brain will think I will feel happy is if I see that name on my phone. And it doesn't matter, how long it takes, how long I'm sitting here. It's upsetting, but as long as I get to see that name finally on my phone or some sort of communication from this person, I'm not going to get that dopamine rush. And so when you do, your brain becomes addicted to it. So to better explain this a little bit, your dopamine rises when rewards are uncertain. Your brain increasingly chases the next moment of connection. So for example, the less emotionally available somebody is, the more that your brain chases after that emotional feeling of being chosen. And then at that moment is when you need to realize that this is no longer the pursuit of happiness. This is now, the pursuit of hope. You're constantly chasing hope rather than acknowledging what truly makes you happy. And at the same time, your body begins releasing the stress hormones of cortisol. So your sleep begins to change, your heart races, you're always anxious, you're constantly just thinking about this person. You're replaying conversations in your mind and you're constantly thinking about every text and analyzing it. Your appetite changes. Your whole entire day and mood depends on this person. And a lot of people mistake that with, oh my gosh, I've never felt this way about anyone before. They occupy so much of my mind. But what you are actually experiencing is an activated threat detection system. The body doesn't always distinguish between excitement and anxiety because they're both physiological arousals. So unfortunately, this is where people confuse emotional compatibility with emotional activation. And ironically, when you do meet somebody who is emotionally available to you, instead of feeling, safe and accepting of it, your body takes a pause and you're like, something feels off. Something's not right. There must be something going on behind the scenes that I don't know about. And this is where a lot of self-sabotaging happens when you finally find a good relationship, because your brain is still holding on to old patterns. So when you start to question why everything is going so good, it is because the calm feels unfamiliar. This doesn't mean that what you are having with this person lacks passion and compassion and, it lacks the things that you hope for in a relationship. Again, it is because your body is not familiar with the calm. It's not familiar with feeling truly safe with a person. So this is where you need to work on expanding the definition of what attraction needs to feel like. As emotionally unavailable people begin to pull away, the relationship is not anymore about if this is a genuine connection, but it starts becoming all about validation. So this is where you start to ask questions like, am I even enough? What am I doing that's not allowing for this to work? What more can I give this person to, continue this connection? Rather than asking yourself, is this even something healthy that I want to be a part of? Is this a true, genuine connection that I have with someone that is beneficial to my emotions and my mental health? And therefore, you stop pursuing intimacy and you start pursuing your self-worth through somebody else's approval. The less available that this person becomes, the more valuable they appear. And a lot of psychologists refer to this as the scarcity effect. And this is when we tend to, as human beings, attach more value to things that are harder to obtain. And this goes for anything in life. Naturally, we are more obsessed with what is absent in our life than what is currently present. And because emotionally unavailable people leave so many unanswered questions to you, you begin to step into an imagination of a way where you begin to answer those questions for yourself, whether they are accurate or not. And this is a concept that I found very fascinating when it came to people, because we've all been there and we've all done this. And it's a very normal cycle that everyone has experienced, but that doesn't make it okay. So I'm going to point it out to you. Our brain often chooses efficiency over accuracy, meaning that it is more efficient for our brain to choose to believe something about somebody that isn't accurately there. And this can go the other way around too. It is more efficient for our brain to believe something about someone that we want for ourselves rather than what is accurately in front of us. So you begin to create these imaginations of this person of what could be, right? You look at this person and you think, oh my gosh, well, I see the potential. I see that it can be good. I see this life. You imagine this version of this person that is so suited for you, rather than being able to accurately see what is in front of you. And so we as humans, we become so addicted and attached to what could be because it is more efficient for our brain. It feels better. It feels easier for our brain to accept that rather than what is accurately there. And then you don't even realize that you are dating an inaccurate potential rather than what is accurately in front of you, rather than what is truly your reality. And this is where people begin to ignore the red flags, not because you're being naive necessarily, but because you don't want to grieve the future that you've imagined with this person, and you just don't want to let it go, because that feeling of letting it go is so much more painful than just sticking to the narrative and that you have created about this person and what you guys have. And so ignoring the red flags becomes easier than grieving the fantasy. Because hope itself is very psychologically addictive. And so that is why people always hold on to the hope. What if they change? What if they do better? And they really hold on to that. And so they become very addicted to that. And then you start to blame yourself for letting go before actually seeing, will there be change? When you know deep down, there won't be. And that is why your brain will keep on investing into this. One of the most beautiful parts about healing through all of this is that your form of attraction begins to change. So as your self-love grows for yourself, your questions when it comes to how you spend time with people changes drastically. So you start to ask yourself questions like, how do I feel after hanging out with them? What is making me happy? How does my time feel productive when I'm with this person? How does my body feel when I'm with this person? Do I feel calm? Do I feel authentically myself? Can I be with this person without feeling fear? So the deepest shift of all, it does not come from convincing emotionally unavailable people to become available to you. It is about becoming emotionally available to yourself. This means being able to listen to your own needs before anybody else's, and most importantly, knowing that your worth has never and will never depend on whether somebody chooses you or not. Love does not come with inconsistency. And when that internal blueprint changes, everything that was once intoxicating to you, you will sit and look back on it and think, how could I have ever done so much disservice to myself? But believe it or not, all of that is a part of your healing journey. It is a part of your awakening. It is a part of how much you become self-aware and conscious of what it is that you deserve and what you truly value out of your relationships and out of your relationship with yourself throughout your life. And that is where I will stop the video for today. I want to thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I hope that it found the audience that resonated with it the most. I will leave for you guys the links to my self-love workshops and manifest your best workshops, whatever it is that you need. It is all below if you want to go a little bit deeper, unlocking those new parts of yourself. My name is Nikki again, and I will see you guys all in the next video.